citizenship to be a commitment you've made to improve your country, your community, your schools. Take pride in being a U.S. citizen. Realize you have responsibilities along with your rights and privileges here. Speak up about your views. Contribute time and energy in making your communities and schools the best they can be.
Good evening, and welcome once again to the Citizenship Chronicles. This is your host, Stephen M. Nelson, saying get up, get out, and get involved. And that's what I did this last weekend when we honored our Minneapolis park system, where we combine the old and the new, and sometimes even the retro, such as the new pavilion at the lake, which has a very retro feel to it. Here in Minneapolis, we love our park system. We love our scenic views, the waterfalls at Minnehaha, the many trails with multi-purposes for jogging, walking, biking, hiking, and, well, like I said, multi-purpose trails. We have the overlooks on the river. We have beautiful scenes that take us through out the city. One of our highlights, of course, is the Rose Garden. This was planned and first planted, and it's that second one in the nation, by the man who lived in this house. A man that's whose name is well known, but whose history has slowly been forgotten. The purpose of this weekend was to honor this man and his whole family. Well, 63 descendants of the man were in town this weekend. And the man, of course, is Theodore Wirth. The event that we'll be chronicling tonight and seeing highlights from is the Worthwhile Weekend. So sit back and enjoy highlights from around the city parks with the Worthwhile Weekend.
Here, I think everybody's here. So, we're going to start another program, but this is going to be very short, I promise you. It's 2 years ago now. It's 2 years ago now since the Theodore Wirth Home and Administration Building was approved by the National Park Service on the National Register of Historic Places. This is not a small thing. We don't have many of these in Minneapolis at all. And I believe it's the first piece of our park system to go on the National Register, so that makes it unique. When the research was done, we did not request this, but it became true also, that the property for 2 square blocks around this house was also designated. And I want to tell you that the two very important things about this house. One was that the Theodore Wirth was living in Hartford when Charles Loring asked him to come here. Now, I told you about that before, but part of the negotiation, well, there were several parts to the negotiation. He was recruited here, and he had lived in this beautiful park in Hartford, so Minneapolis built him this beautiful home. The truth of the whole story, though, is that he designed the house himself, and then Mrs. Wirth didn't like it. She said it was all windows, and she couldn't hang any pictures, so he turned over the design to her. And but it is oriented to the basement room. Well, basement is hardly a basement. Bright, sunny rooms across the back side of the house, where the entire Minneapolis park system was either designed or redesigned by Theodore Wirth. The other thing he had in his negotiation, which was symbolized by the antique cars today, is that they gave him a car and a driver for the rest of his life. And even in his retirement, they gave him a car and a driver, a secretary, and office space, and he continued to work. One of the other things that they gave him as negotiation, and deserves a round of applause, he got to bring his good friend and his bookkeeper from Hartford, Christian A. Bosson. And Chris Bosson's family became close friends with Wirth, and Chris lived right up the street. He continued to live there when he succeeded Wirth as superintendent, and Wirth lived here as superintendent emeritus. So those were the negotiations, and this house is the result. And because the work was done in the house, it qualified in the National Register. A lot of people benefited from this. One of the people that has expressed it most beautifully is Jim Karate, the president of the Boys and Girls Club, and he's with us here today. Jim, would you say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Joan. I think when Joan called me a while back, I was going to read a letter, which I didn't bring, and I don't imagine anyone out here has a copy of it. But so I'm just going to sort of just say a few things maybe as a representative of somebody that grew up in the park system, have been deeply affected by, as a child, by the fact that the parks were available to us. I came from a very troubled family, and as a child, myself and my 5 brothers and sisters spent a good deal of our time in Loring Park with great park staff and great programs, and made a big difference. As we got older, we moved around the city. We went from Loring Park to closer to Peavey Park, Franklin Avenue, and that too made a big difference. That's where we were able to play sports and maybe stay out of trouble for the most part. And what I find is really interesting about the park system is it actually led, for me, it led into a career. It led into a career with Boys and Girls Clubs. And today we have 2 Boys and Girls Clubs that are actually located in parks. One in Phelps Park on 39th in Chicago, and another in a park-owned building on 24th and 11th Avenue South in the Phillips neighborhood. And the parks changed quite a bit over time. These days, there's just sort of awesome partnerships that the Park Board's been able to establish with community agencies such as the Boys and Girls Club and the YWCA and the YMCA and so on. And I think working together, we're able to take, I think people perhaps that are in situations like I was when I was a child, really needed a place to go, somewhat wound up in the parks by default sometimes because there simply was no other place to go. So I'm here, I suppose, speaking on behalf of those people that were affected. We're glad the parks are here. We're thankful to all of those that I think had the foresight to get the park system together in Minneapolis, because it's made a difference for a lot of people at a lot of different levels. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Jim. Jim might think he accidentally ended up in those parks, but Theodore Wirth talked about children like Jim was, and he said, what am I going to do for those children in the future? I want to park within 6 blocks of every child, so every needy child that might need a safe place to go would have that rest and relaxation and recreation with good supervision. So the result was somebody like Jim, who's leading the Boys and Girls Club today. So it wasn't an accident. A lot of people think it's an accident. They think the whole thing's an accident, just a pretty place. I would like to introduce Vivian Mason. Some of you met her last night, but the important thing about Vivian here today is how much she helped us, even to get the signage on the house, identifying it as a National Historic Site. Vivian?
Thank you. I had the privilege to speak to the Wirth family at the first event of this Worthwhile Weekend last night, and it was so wonderful, and I'm really overwhelmed by all of you who came for this, and this is such an exciting time. I think one of the themes that's run through all of the speeches, and I'm not going to make a long speech, all of the speeches that we heard last night, again today, at the dedication of the statues this morning, is that the Minneapolis parks are so beautiful, so accessible, and they have met so many needs for so many kids like Jim, like me, like Harry Davis, and we really want to give back to the community. The other thing that Jim just mentioned was partnerships between the Park Board and other organizations. And I can't think of a finer group to be partnering on things with than the Minneapolis Parks Legacy Society. It does give me great pleasure today to be able to thank Joan, thank Ted, and thank Joan's father, Ellsworth Johnson, for all of the work that they did to see that this house got historic recognition. And I am especially pleased that we did get the sign, especially the sign out there on the street, that so when people drive by, they'll know what this house is and hopefully come and have an opportunity to tour. I think that I share the vision of the Minneapolis Parks Legacy Society in hoping that very soon we can have this house become an interpretive center, not just for the legacy of Theodore Wirth, but the legacy and history of the parks in the city of Minneapolis. So thank you very much for coming. With Vivian's help and Rochelle and Annie and John Irwin and Walt Dietzick, on Wednesday night the park board approved that we could put the plaque on the house as well as the sign at the street. So since Ted and my father, Ellsworth Johnson, were very instrumental in making this happen, we'll have them uncover the plaque that is now here, and we will leave it uncovered forever so anyone who comes to this door knows this was Theodore Wirth's house and administration building. Dad and Ted, do you want to try and peel that off of there?
Thank you. I would just like to make a few comments. This park system, of course, was initially planned for the people of Minneapolis, but you would be surprised to know that people come from all over, around all of the suburbs, to come here to make use of the park in many different ways. As president of the Minneapolis Aquatennial, I can tell you that this park system in 1958 was featured in a national television program. At that time we had Dave Garroway, the Today Show. How many of you would remember Dave Garroway? And we had the real peak of the day was when we, at 4 o'clock in the morning, went out to the Lake of the Isles and wanted to show the nation what we had in the way of a lake system and what we could do. And so we had Helen O'Connell, who was with the Today Show that morning, with Dave Garroway on the shore in the Lake of the Isles, and a small orchestra playing the Hiawatha Love Song. And here comes behind the little island where all the people were watching at about the time the sun would rise enough so we could see each other, and she sang the Hiawatha Love Song. That went clear across the nation, the first time it was ever done. Aquatennial was started by 3 men who went to Canada to see the King and Queen of England, and they had a celebration. And we have somebody that remembers that? Can you remember that?